We're in Las Vegas, and this is what we can see out of our hotel room.
I love being the same day. If you don't do it, I'll find a military policeman to do it for you. Who does not have a seat at the table? The winner's on it.
Hi!
You have
Hi, Dirk.
Hey, Jerry DeVort, how you doing? 1, 2, 7.
But not me. She should be pretty upset that she
I don't want to walk in.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Have you
got $5.
Jim Bruno with these tattoos on his head. Larry and Cat.
This one and this one are mine. This is a friend of this. Thank you. Thank you.
Bob Moss is his wife. 67, 68, and 69. Yeah, you got over there after we did all the work.
Professor DeVort.
Oh,
Jeremy and his wife.
Right in front of the big
Bill Crittenden. He served with me.
See you again there, Corporal.
Thank you. Thank you. How you doing? This is Larry Riley. I served with him. He was over there at the same time I was.
Reunion. Have you had a good time? Personally, I think it was, disappointed in the turnout, but
I think we've done that. I think you violated a little.
I'd also like to thank the wives, girlfriends, and families of the members that made it here with their spouses and loved ones. I appreciate you coming. Okay, I got.
Once you got over the States, you had any time on your CID.
He helped go to the area.
Name is 5'10".
David Durkheimer. And then Frank Thompson. Bill Crittenden. Sergeant Elder. He was the head of construction over there. Jack Lee. He was our original guys, and then he became dog handler.
Presentation tonight, speaking as it were in front of a bunch of heroes, because I think anybody who served in a war in support of the nation's interests qualify to wear that badge. And I will talk more about that. In fact, the theme tonight is going to be the new frontier. That's why I'm standing off on the side here. But I want to go back to introductions for a minute. I can remember being introduced in Chicago to a number of folks, much less distinguished than this crowd. And the guy said, well, at that time I was in NATO, and the guy said, well, we're really pleased to have with us the latest dope from NATO. Here's General Boring. And I pleaded in those days not guilty on 2 counts, but I think that remains to be seen how it's going to work today. You'll have to pardon me as Jim and company try to, he's not making this thing work over here together. So I'll do, I'm going to give you this, Helen, and you can just tell anybody anything you want until then. I'm going to go be a technical expert over here. You could have picked almost any place. I heard Ashtabula, Ohio was high on the list. But you picked a town where quiet contemplation and reverent thought and reflection upon all those things that are important could take place. does everybody know what Las Vegas means in the old Spanish, not the new Spanish?
Don't look at me, I'm not Spanish.
I never suggested that you were. I just wanted you to make sure that we participated a lot together tonight in these remarks. All right, good. Las Vegas means the place where you eat sand, on which the horses of the conquistadores have trod, and also pisado. There's something else about your wallet is ripped into small pieces by those same horses and trod upon. And Madeleine Albright would probably, or our ex-Secretary of State would probably have something about crushed cojones, but I don't speak enough Spanish. And I wouldn't take it any further because I wouldn't want to offend the sensibilities of this crowd, all right? So I thought, you know, what can you talk about? The guys who served together and their ladies who continue to serve. And I thought that it might be fun to talk about verities of life. You know, we live in an age where supposedly everything is pluralistic, everything is kind of relational one to another, and there aren't any absolutes. So I thought I would talk tonight, because, especially with an ex-military crowd, with some German folks in the crowd too, and I've got a German mother, so we like absolutes, right, Conrad?
Right.
Margaret, right?
Yes.
Richtig, alles klar, yeah? So I spent some time in Germany, enough to get, you know, I'm dangerous in bars in Germany, is the way it works out. But I thought I'd talk about some verities of life. How's that? Isn't that just the subject you wanted me to talk about? All right, so here's a verity of life. I had a friend who invited his mother over for dinner, and he and his roommate. His roommate was about 23, and her name was Cynthia, and she was a knockout. And mother, who came over for dinner, kept staring across the table at Cynthia with, you know, kind of looks that mothers can give roommates who didn't end up to be the right roommate kind of thing. And the son finally noticed, he said, "Mom," he said, "I just want you to know." He said, "This is strictly a financial arrangement, that Cynthia and I are just roommates in the modern age, and there's no hanky-panky going on." And Cynthia, she jumped in right away. You're familiar with what happened then with the ladle? Everybody familiar with the ladle? Good, I'm glad some of you are familiar with the ladle, because what happened the next morning after this thing was over and they offered this protestation, they noticed that the silver ladle was missing. They looked all over for it, and after a couple of days, they said, you know, the only thing we can figure out is that Mom must have dropped, she was admiring it, Mom must have dropped it into her coat or something by mistake. So son calls Mom, and says, "Hey, did you by any chance drop the silver ladle into your coat or something? We noticed you were, you know, admiring it." And she said, "Well," she said, "I'm not accusing you of anything." And she said, "Well," she says, "as a matter of fact," she says, "I'm not accusing you of anything either. But if Cynthia had been sleeping in her own bed, she would have found the silver ladle by now." The verity of life story. No, wait, this is serious stuff. I thought this was a philosophic crowd here. The verity of life is never lie to your mother. True story? Well, at the risk of, this is not a stand-up comedy deal. I don't do that. And I'm just after retiring from the Air Force, and pleased to serve as you were, it took me 37 years to figure it out before, you know, I jumped ship, and then went back to Chicago, where my wife Myrna and I grew up, and that's where Jim Wilford and I cranked up and started together, and delighted that he's a guy with a very long memory, by the way. And I'm glad he didn't know me really in later years, because he really would have some things to put me in jail. But the things that I recall most about growing up on the south side of Chicago is, you know, we had a great public school system. We had really functioning neighborhoods. We had superb sense of mooring points. Even though there were all the common stress points of young men growing up that tend to send you off on tangents, you know, you grow out of them, all those dynamics when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, 25, 40, 50, 80. You know, finally you get out of it, you know, and you're on the straight and narrow somewhere around age 90. But a verity of life is, I guess, that human nature doesn't change. And it's going to lead into, again, a serious notion in just a moment of the new frontier. But it does bring back to me another verity of life and having to do with a military person by the name of King Arthur. Everyone knows King Arthur, right? Camelot. And everyone's familiar when Arthur, as a young warrior, got captured by the neighboring king. No one's really familiar. Your medieval history's not there. Well, he did. You know, the rule was you could get killed because you're captured, or you get ransomed for about 63,500 gold talents. Anybody know how much a talent is? No, I don't either, but it's a lot, you know, so 63,000. The king explains this, and the guy says, Arthur says, well, you gotta give me some time to raise the money. And he says, all right, that's fine. He said, I'll give you 6 months. And so Arthur gets on his horse. He's just about ready to ride back to Camelot when the guy says, look, he says, there is another thing. He said, there's a question. If you can answer the question, I'll give you another 6 months, by the way. If you can, I'll let you go for nothing. And the question is this, and Arthur's listening intently, is what is it that women really want? Arthur says, right. He says, I'll be back in a year. And he rides off, summons the round table. And you know, over there's Galahad and there's Lancelot and all those guys. And he said, all right, guys, we got to raise the money, 63,000 gold talents, or give me the answer to the question. He asked the round table, and the answer from the round table is, duh, yeah, duh, all right. So a year goes by, and they're raising taxes, you know, doing all the things that governments do. And it gets back in the day before, and he says, all right, any answer to the question? No answer to the question. How are we doing on the money? 62,500 gold talents. Short. So they're just a little thin on the money. And Arthur says, this is desperate. Well, Merlin's at the end of the table doing his beard thing. And he says, why don't we go ask the witch in the woods? Everybody recoils in horror. The witch in the woods is a fulsome creature. She has warts and boils and emanations of oozing this and that and odoriferous things coming from the various orifices. And I want you to just sum it up your own images here. I would not want to foot stomp this too hard. Arthur, you're a nurse. Arthur puts on a surgical mask and rides out to the tree where the witch in the woods lives. And he walks in, he says, hey, witch in the woods. He says, I got this question for you. He said, and she says, ask away. She said, well, you know what it is that women really want? She says, sure. He says, will you tell me? She says, sure. He says, oh, great. She says, I want to marry Galahad first. I said, oh, he says, I can't do that. You know, he's got the mask on. He says, he rides back. Sorry, no deal, even if it takes my life. He rides back, summons the round table. Round table gets back together. Galahad says what? Says, my liege. He says, anything for you. So Arthur rides back to the tree trunk, gets in, sees the witch in the woods, says, Galahad will marry you. And she says, well, the answer to the question is what women really want, that they want to be in control of their own lives. He said, my God, that's it. My God. And he rides over to the other king and tells him, and the king says, my God, that's it. And he lets him go. He says, Arthur, you're a fine guy. Goes back. The wedding is the next day. You can imagine this, the carriage with Galahad strapped on the top with heavy rope and the witch is tied in. The horses are stumbling. People are kind of falling down the street. There is no reception to speak of. But it is that night, and they push Galahad all in through the oaken doors and drop the bar on the door. And it's the nuptial chamber routine. And he goes through the diaphanous curtains, and there, lying on the bed, is the witch in the woods, who is now turned into a wonderful, blonde, curvaceous lady of wonderful manner and appearance. And she raises up on her elbows, and she says, Galahad, you're really a prince for marrying me. She said, so I've decided to give you a choice. You can have me like this in the night and enjoy me. Or you can have me like this in the daytime and show me off to your friends. The question for the 127th is, and I will take it by voice vote, what did Galahad choose? I'm going to do it on the count of three, shout it out. 1, 2, night or day? 1, 2, 3. Night. This is a 98.5 percentile American crowd. I have spoken in front of groups when I dared use this story, you know, and I had to kind of cover up or watch myself a little bit. But anyway, pleased to be with you guys and ladies. And that's not what Galahad said, by the way. He said, Day? No, what Galahad says, look, I married you, you're my wife. A choice like that ought to be yours. And she said, oh, you wonderful man. She said, I choose to be beautiful all the time. And what's the verity of life? What's the moral of the story? Dale, let a woman have her way or it gets ugly real fast. All right. Thank you. I have no other wisdom to offer. I've been married for 38 years and I learned that on day one. And I think I learned it tonight again, earlier, I'm not sure. If you talk about verities of life, and just to switch horses a little bit, you all are not here because you don't believe in the theme of service, that you don't believe in the theme of taking care of your own and looking to the future with a notion that somehow we've all got a stake in this country we call America. I've recently come from a memorial service of a guy named John Gardner. Anybody know who John Gardner is? Any show of hands? Ex-secretary of HEW, founder of Independent Sector, Common Cause, confidant to presidents, a White House fellow founder, which is how I met John. An extraordinary man. Probably the guy who said, the highest office in the land is that of being a citizen. That of being a citizen. And at his memorial service, presidents spoke, and a number of others. I'd like to dabble with a little poetry from time to time. I wrote a few lines for the occasion, and you have to know that this guy, John Gardner, was a force, and maybe some of his books will come to mind. He wrote a book called Excellence. He wrote a book called Self-Renewal, another thing called On Leadership, a Clausewitzian kind of thing, the seminal book on leadership. In Excellence, he was talking about, a society that will tolerate shoddy philosophy because it's an exalted profession, and somehow has no respect for plumbing because it is kind of a lower activity. We'll find out over time that neither his theories or his pipes will hold water. And John had this great kind of sense of balance, and he'd write. He was a dreamer who could write. He was a writer who could teach. He was a teacher who could inspire people to action. And I heard a president say, John Gardner did more in terms of accomplishing things. He was only an elective office or appointed office for 2 years. He said he did more in his life than presidents did in terms of changing the course of America. John really believed in communities. John really believed in communities and leadership as kind of the motive forces of our society. And he had a simple quote, and you all, I think, will recognize it. And the quote was this: freedom and responsibility, liberty and duty. That's the deal. And I think that probably sums up the human experience. And what it makes me transition to is about 3 years ago when we were in a meeting at the Corcoran Gallery in Washington. I had been talking about pillars of the society, and John was very much into communities, renewal and regeneration and leadership. And I said, look, at the pillars of the American society that you need to grab a hold of, you've got the economy, you've got the government, you've got certainly renewal of communities, etc. I said, but what about the military thing, John? What about the military pillar? There is over a 75% approval rating for the military in America today. And this is fairly constant. This was a number that didn't change much with 9/11. 9/11 spiked it up to the 80s, but 77% of people appreciate in America the military. And as you know, we transitioned to the all-volunteer force as kind of a political expedient in World War II. Although, how many of you guys were drafted? Any of you? Yeah, a whole bunch. The political expedient of the all-volunteer force had its value, and it's a great force. It's thin in some areas. I think the previous administration took some expedient measures that didn't fare well, and we're trying to backfill that. But I'm not here with a political message for you tonight. I am here with this message, though, that the volunteer force has created a dislocation between the civilian population and its military. There's one serving enlisted man in the United States, or one man who serves as an enlisted man in the United States Senate. That's Chuck Hagel from Nebraska. Most senators and congressmen have had no military service. And I worry as a nation that we have gotten so comfortable that we think we can outsource something as vital to us as our military defense. And when nations try to do that, to give it to someone else, let them do it. Them usually being people of color and people of a lower economic stripe. then the democracy or the republic, we're kind of a hybrid, is in danger. So about 3 years ago with John Gardner, I was talking about this concept of SOS America, or Service Over Self America, to grab one of the main links, and that's the military link, and to somehow get the young men back into the fold. Because frankly, it's the young men who are the problems in America, if you think about it objectively. They are subject to all this need for self-esteem and very, shallow kinds of value systems. And I'm speaking about I'm using myself, by the way, as a role model. I joined the Air Force because I thought I'd get to wear a cool uniform and get a lot of girls. That was my motivation. What are you guys laughing about? That's what I'm
You went to the academy, though.
Well, then you find jets and other things, and you travel the world, and you meet interesting people, and you kill them. And, it's all that. There's more to life than that. No, the true thing is that we go to war as a nation with extreme reluctance. And notwithstanding the fact that, again, young men tend to do things in an unknowing fashion, there is something that you guys know about that I talk to with great confidence, and that is you tend to really rely on one another. There's a comradeship factor. You do things certainly for your own standards. I mean, you work, fight, play, pray well for your own standards, because I can't give you standards that you don't already have. I can't impose them on you. You are what you are. But we, if we're in the same outfit, small unit loyalty, boy, we can impose standards. And what's more, if you have the noble goals of serving country, that gives you something you can carry with you your whole life. In fact, the fact that you're here tonight suggests to me that both the comradeship and the noble goal of service continues to prevail in your own outlook and in your own lives. And so the question that John Gardner grabbed me, we're talking about service over self, and why every young man, somewhere between 18 and 26 in America, is a way of renewing the nation, in a way of renewing the young people, ought to spend a year in military service. So we could mix the age groups. Some guy maybe graduated from college and he teams up with an 18-year-old who teams up with a guy from the ghetto of Los Angeles who teams up with a guy who's just got out of MIT, who's another guy from Ashtabula, Ohio, or Las Vegas. And you mix and match these guys and you keep them in a company. Very important. You keep them in 3 platoons with one company for that year. And they go out and do things to augment the all-volunteer force, as well as perhaps do some activities that may help the states. Aren't you tired of reading about how Idaho or Colorado never have enough people to fight forest fires? Or why they came out on the Jerry Denton airplane, the God Bless America airplane, if you will, and got shot down the 1st of June, '66. Ground fire, and I was joking at the table. I tried to capture a truck. I broke my back in a few things, and so John Wayne could have pulled this off, but I captured a truck full of troops. It was a great capture thing. And so I was pretty much outgunned by all these guys with AKs, and I'm sitting there with my 6-shooter. But 23, well, that's what I call it. It was a 38 that had 6 holes in it that you put bullets in.
Excuse me? You didn't carry a 45?
No, you couldn't hit that door with a 45.
Now we're getting...
Some of us beg to differ.
All right, well, maybe you could hit the door. You'd have to do all this special fine stuff to it. Yeah, you could hit the door.
At least 10 people put a...
I withdraw my dumb comment. I couldn't hit that door with a 45. So anyway, let me give you some quick stats. 23 million when we left, 80 million Vietnamese now. Half of them under the age of 24. What is the smartest thing the 127th can do? Right now, tonight. Now go out and buy a fleet of psychedelic Volkswagen buses and find the place where they're going to do Woodstock over there. Because, their age of Aquarius is upon them. The Communist Party, which is 2 million out of the 80 million, is still, quote, in control and will be in control forever, which is an interesting commentary on the Marxist dialectic, which is supposed to have everything changing all the time. And they are no longer a democratic republic, they're just a socialist republic, and their party platform is lots of foreign investment, and we want as free a market as we can. And by the way, we just concluded the best bilateral trade arrangement that's been concluded with any nation over the last 30 years with Vietnam. Pete Peterson, who was a POW with me, in fact was the ambassador over there. And the Vietnamese people, anybody speak Vietnamese here? I'd be surprised. Yeah.
Look darn
The
wise.
story is same thing. Bomb to bomb. Yeah, I got it. All right. Yeah.
Bomb the bomb.
I didn't realize you were also literate. I think we'll leave that. Anyway, if you remember the word me means beautiful in Vietnamese. It also means American. And what we experienced over there, I ran the first morning, went into the Caravel, and stayed at the Caravel, beautiful hotel, and then went over and got up at 4:30 in the morning. As Saigon used to come awake, you know, most of the Vietnamese cities, they get up in the dark. You remember that? And so they're out there playing badminton and Tai Chi and doing all this stuff. So I went out jogging and ran around Saigon at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and found people saying, hey, they wave and say, me, you know, so, you know, how you doing, you know, and keep smoking. And I got into a badminton game under a streetlight, found out my night vision wasn't what it used to be.
Do the Wanalea.
Oh, okay.
The Wanalea song.
Okay, we're ready.
You ready? 1, 2, 3, go. I'm cracking up from the lack of shacking up. I'm cracking up from the lack of shacking up. I come from the Isle of Come on, Wanalea, and I'm cracking from the lack of nookie too. Hard up, hard up, hard up. Cracking from the lack of nookie too. Oh yeah. Yeah. Woo.
Where's the flash on this, Durst?
Wait a minute, hold on. Jingle bells, mortar shells, VC and the grass. Take your Merry Christmas. Okay. That was all it was. That's all right. Ready? Ready. Oh, jingle bells, mortar shells, VC in the grass. You can take your Merry Christmas and shove it up your ass.